we're delighted to share with you powerful social media trends that are impacting and benefiting the geospatial community. Historically, as Talbot mentioned, social media has been monitored or tracked through keywords and hashtags. Every day, the amount of data keeps growing. This is primarily a Twitter-based phenomenon, which is primarily a word-based social media network. And this large set of data has been tracked or monitored through these words. But what's happened in the last 5 years is the number of sources has grown dramatically. The types of media posted has shifted to not just words and hashtags, but to videos that have no words, to pictures that have no words. And in certain environments, I think it's the old saying, a picture tells 1,000 words, speaks 1,000 words. That's happening in social media. Today, as of last quarter, 57% of Americans owned a smartphone. And technologically, as part of that cell phone is GPS-enabled services. We call them location services or geolocation services. And this is enabling us to capture geospatial information for the first time, real time, from people who are publicly sharing it as part of their day-to-day communication and day-to-day living. The location data is typically embedded in the metadata of the social media post. So what results is, what's happening every day is this social cloud, we call it, all social data. It's not only growing in the number of services like Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, YouTube, Picasa, Vine, Foursquare, Facebook, and hundreds of others. It's growing in the richness of the data. And this is a new phenomenon. I'd say it's maybe a year or two old, and it started off as a very small bucket of data, and now it's growing dramatically. So there are tools available like Geophedia that provide this structure to search the social cloud and allow you to capture, from a geospatial perspective, intelligence and knowledge of what's happening right now at a location, or for that matter, what happened 6 months ago at a location, or what happened every day over the last 6 months from a location as you define it. The information that is accessible is publicly available. The users consent to sharing it. And because of the richness of the data, services like Geophedia can overlay it geospatially on a base map or some other mapping system. So it's great, and I guess let's empirically talk about the differences in the data between the traditional methods. So maybe some of you are familiar with services like Hootsuite, TweetDeck, Radian6, BrandWatch, Sysomos, Sprout Social, Tracks, BrandWatch, and maybe several hundred others that track by keyword and hashtag social media. If you were to use one of those tools and monitor a location, you'd miss upwards of 70% of the data coming from a location. And we empirically ran a study of the London Olympic venues in 2012. So we set a virtual perimeter, geofence, around each of the 30 London Olympic venues themselves, the equestrian center, the swimming hall, not the overall London area, just the venues where the fans and spectators and athletes would sit for an event. And during the 2 weeks in August 2012, we captured roughly 200,000 posts across 5 social networks, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, YouTube, and Picasa. And we looked at that data and we said, had we been monitoring with the keyword and hashtag, what percentage of that data had a term in it like Olympics, London 2012, Olympics 2012 gold medal? And only 29% of that data set contained one of those relevant keywords or hashtags. So upwards of 71% of the data in that instance you would have missed from a geospatial perspective. So I guess the question then is, why is this relevant, and how is this relevant for the use cases? We found that public safety officials in emergency response are very interested in what's happening at a place. They want to capture all the data, pictures, videos, tweets, and they need to do it very quickly. They need to cut that social cloud quickly to get at the data. Emergency responders, law enforcement professionals, and commercial and private sector businesses want to know what's happening at events, at their retail establishments, at their hotels, at their restaurants, or any other facility or physical place that has data coming from it. So I can show you now, and this is not meant to be a commercial pitch of Geophedia. This is meant mostly to demonstrate what is capable from a geospatial perspective, to look at some data sets to say, okay, how does this work in action? So we'll take a look here at what happened in Boston, at the Boston tragedy. And we will look at an area on a map, and you'll see that this is a geofence around the area where the explosion happened at the end of the Boston Marathon a few weeks ago. And you can see the posts coming up on the screen, and the T represents Twitter, the brown icon represents Instagram, and then there's Flickr and YouTube images in there as well. And this is a way for you to see activity from a geospatial perspective, what's happening in each specific location. And any social media that we would pull into Geophedia you can represent in this manner, and each individual post has its own latitude and longitude. So again, it's embedded in the metadata, and it's there to visually display. If you look at the collage view, which is a Pinterest-like view, you can actually see these items represented on the screen. Some of them do have keywords and hashtags, some of them don't. And you can scroll down the screen, you can see this is the aftermath of the event. And if you go down, you can look back in time to the actual event itself when the explosions actually happened. And I can go ahead and do that by going back in time by searching by date. And I believe the explosion happened on the 15th. And we'll go in and do a date range search to pull items just from the 15th. Let me see here. 11. So in this way, we can see not only what's happening from a location in terms of the richness of content, videos, tweets, or pictures, we can also see a chronology of what things look like before, during, and after. And if you went down to look before the event, before the explosions happened earlier in the day, you would see a normal day of people just enjoying their day in and around Boston, doing sightseeing activities like pictures from this church. Here's a user just as a fan at the Boston Marathon, and you can see here's some runners. And not only do we have the location, the latitude and longitude, we have the user's name, the date it was posted, and the time. And then if we wanted to go see more about this post from the finish line, we could actually look and see who posted it, the latitude and longitude associated with that post. We can see where that post actually happened on a map, and we could do a proximity search around that location of 100 meters, 300 meters, and 1 kilometer. So you can see in a real-time context, if, let's say, a tornado swept across the Midwest and we were trying to find out where tornadoes actually impacted the Midwest, we could do searches across geographies, find images of uprooted trees or building damage, and then isolate those areas and identify the hot spots of what's actually the most important and the most impacted regions. we go back to the actual feed, we'll go in and see some of the explosions. Some of this imagery can get fairly graphic, but it's mostly meant to demonstrate the fact of things are real time and happening as it happens in real life. Let me see here. I don't think I have the date range going on the right time frame. .59 p.m. There we go. I think the explosion happened sometime in the early to mid-afternoon. So you can, you see images like this one on the right here. You see things happening that are fairly profound, and this has repeated itself again and again and again through social media on episodes like the Empire State Building shooting. There was a shooting in Chardon, Ohio, where people are recording what's happening and almost sending out distress signals that something's happened, and sometimes even seeking help. Let me go down here and see if I can get to the. Actually, there was so much data coming from this location that I might need to do a further search. This is still in the evening here. Say, well, let me just refine this a little bit more and do a date filter of, let's do 5 p.m. One of the questions we get is social media, is that there's a huge amount of social media, but what percentage of it has geolocation? And it's not 100%, and in some instances it's far from it. But we do see enormous increases in the overall volume over time. Last summer, Instagram reported that 20% of social media from Instagram had geolocation appended to it. And so you have, not only is the percentage of geotagged social media coming up as a higher percentage of overall data, the amount of data that's growing is significant. So it's a powerful trend that is not, we don't see it changing. We see this increasing and accelerating. So here we can see some of the imagery happening from above of the destruction happening at the site, and this is in the aftermath, and you can see it going down, and people actually reaching out to others. I'm okay, and lots of other kind of social data about what happened around the event. We can also perform ad hoc queries, so we can go anywhere in the world. So let's say we want to go to Manhattan right now and find out what's happening in this location in Midtown. We can do that. And this is real-time data. So right now, if you want to see what's happening in New York City, you could do that. And it looks like it's a pretty normal day. There's Grand Central, and there's more pictures of Grand Central. And we can go down the screen and just keep loading more and more and more items. So there's a real-time capability that allows you to take a snapshot view, and then there's also ability to record this data, archive it, and host it, and retrieve it, and perform subsequent analytics on it. So that is a quick, I would say, overview of the thesis behind how to put structure around social media effectively. That's what geolocation can do. It provides structure, and that's not a foreign concept for those of you on the phone working in the geospatial community. We are just another layer of data that's profound in that it's real-time and unique. We are partnering with Esri to make this layer available in ArcGIS Online, and as soon as Esri is ready to ingest our data, we're ready to populate that. So maybe we have some Esri users on the line today, but we'll be presenting at the National Security Summit in San Diego on July 6th and 7th. We also will have a booth at Esri the following week at the Users Conference. So I guess that's the overview. Oh, there's one piece of this. You can provide, the traditional data providers like Hootsuite and Radian6 can provide location-based insights, but their filtering technologies are by keyword and hashtag first, which eliminates the vast majority of the data, and then they put geolocation on top of it. So you just lose 65, 70% of the data when you apply that methodology. Here, the fundamental methodology is geospatial first. Everything is geospatial, and then there's subsequent filtering by date range, by media type, by keyword, by user, by trends, by volume, etc. So I guess that's a quick run-through. Talbot, if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if for the visitors on the phone, if you'd like to try Geophedia for free for a 30-day trial, we do have a trial sign-up form at geophedia.com, and we're look forward to sharing our interesting technology with you. So Talbot, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If there are questions from the audience, if you want to submit them via chat, I'm happy to field those questions.
Yeah, so if y'all wouldn't mind in the audience, if you have questions, submit it by the chat window. You should have a chat icon that you can click on. I'm happy to answer or pass those questions on to Phil. Really looking in the context of how do you imagine this fitting into an emergency manager's decision-making process? In other words, this is kind of untrusted data or trusted data. How do you get this into the decision-making process?
Well, we are technologists and not experts in emergency management, so I think that's the one caveat here. And so we've been partnering with leading groups to integrate into the workflow of a EOC. But our tool has been used during certain events like floods in Minneapolis and Duluth, in Hurricane Sandy, and in Hurricane Sandy in particular, Booz Allen, which is was working with FEMA, was able to identify the most impacted regions very quickly using Geophedia. Now, this requires the judgment of the emergency responder to prioritize which posts are real and not real. And so we typically say, if you see 5 or 10 or 15 people posting about the same thing, chances are the image is not photoshopped, and chances are it's real. And so, volume of activity is a good proxy. And so, in that instance, for Hurricane Sandy, FEMA woke up that morning, and I guess I should say Booz Allen woke up that morning, who was consulting FEMA, and said, where should we shift resources? Where are the most impacted regions? And by drawing these geofeeds on a map, they were able to see the Jersey Shore was highly impacted, and the Connecticut Shore wasn't. The south side of Manhattan was heavily impacted, and the Upper East Side wasn't. And so at a very minimum, it was prioritizing the resource allocation within a geography to say, here's the areas that are impacted the most. We have an ability to stream the technology. So in a command center like the New York City Office of Emergency Management, they have jumbo screens. They're large screens in the command center where once an area is identified as a hotspot, this geofeed can be displayed real time on a board for everyone to see. And people will post on social media that they're in distress and that they need help. Okay, and so here is there's a conference in New York called TechCrunch, and these are posts happening real time. Just now was within the last 30 seconds. So, we can go anywhere in the world. We can say, let's go to Tokyo right now. Let's say there was another tsunami. We can go to Tokyo and we can zoom in and say, okay, we know that I don't know, Shinjuku is Chiyodaku is impacted, for example, right in here. So we can, whoops, I'm sorry, I just clicked the wrong button, apologize. We can go in and say, let's look and see what's happening in that region real time as situations unfold, and let's coordinate this activity with people in the field. So I guess, Talbot, that's a long-winded way of saying we received a lot of interest from emergency responders, and it's really prioritizing resource allocation, identified people in need, and interpreting the data to make sure you're not misled. And this happened in Hurricane Sandy. Someone tweeted and put out an Instagram picture that the New York City Stock Exchange had flooded. And so we received a call and said, do you think this is true? And we looked and we saw one post, one tweet, and one Instagram picture, and we said, no, this is not true. There would be in Manhattan, there would be way more than one post if the stock exchange were flooded, and it ended up being a hoax. On the flip side, there was problems in one of the subway stations, and there were dozens of images and dozens of tweets. That was true. But really, it's the judgment of the emergency responder to make the call and looking at the data. Our job is to present the data, show the frequency of the data, and then have it integrated into the workflow so that its decisions are made in the context of not just social media, but all data on limited resources, on manpower, and on other issues.
Okay. I've got 3 more questions, one from Dick, then from Steve, and then from Elizabeth. Dick would like to know if he can use local data, for example, school districts.
To use the data to import into Geophedia, or to search, or to monitor local schools?
Well, I would imagine both.
Yes, we do have some customers who are monitoring schools, especially schools that have problems and issues. In fact, the Tempe, Arizona Police Department had a TV episode on Geophedia and tell us they averted a murder with a homicide at a high school because of Geophedia. Sometimes people announce their intentions on social media before they actually do it, especially youth. And in this instance, it's picked up, I think, by the ABC affiliate in Arizona and Scottsdale or Tempe. And this girl announced that she was going to go to school and she was going to kill some people. And they were monitoring using Geophedia, saw this come up in the stream, confronted her. She had weapons, bullets, and everything, and she said, yeah, I was absolutely going to do it. And who knows if it would have ultimately happened, but that's the kind of intelligence and problems that can be averted with this monitoring capability. In terms of uploading data into our system, we can ingest any sort of geospatial information. What we would ask is that it has a geospatial component to it, so that the data is clean and it's accurate, has accurate geolocation. There are some tools out there that have inferences on social media, on location, and it's maybe 50% accurate or 30% accurate, and our clients want verifiable locations because they're making critical time-sensitive decisions based on location.
Okay. Elizabeth would like to know, is the social media data publicly available with geotags, or is it something that's worked out with individual agreements with each of the social media services?
It's a great question. The underlying service providers like Twitter and Instagram and others have an agreement with the users, and the users can either make their data publicly available or private. If it's private, we cannot capture it. If it's publicly available, we have agreements with those services to pull in the data. and abide by that underlying user agreement. So everything we do is legally permissible. It's consented by the user, and we view the geolocation piece as kind of amplifying your message. It's almost like social media on steroids, where you're announcing where you're at. Now, some people would say that it's too powerful, that it potentially invades privacy or some other issues. The user has consented, and what we're seeing now is that there's value in identifying your location emerging with things like E911 applications, where you're self-identifying your location, with mapping services and navigation. And we think that social media is going to follow this trend, and consumer companies, consumer brands will begin promoting geolocation in their offerings so that the data set becomes richer and richer. Right now, there's not lots of reasons to geolocate locate data for an underlying user. We think there'll be more reasons in the future.
Okay, and Steve was just commenting that this could be a useful application in tracking bio outbreaks throughout the country or a region. What types of disasters or crisis do you see this type of technology being applied to?
I think all crisis situations, and we'd love to explore that use case. It's however you'd like to apply the data. We've been approached by health and human services organizations about understanding health impacts by regions, and anything that people want to track or monitor that's noteworthy or has some significance is this geophilia can be applied. Geospatial information can be applied. It really depends on the use case and what your objective is. It seems like every time we show the technology, there's yet another use case, and so we'd love to, I guess, partner with members of the GITA community to develop those develop that thought leadership.
So you would even see this perhaps being useful to utility for outage management?
Yes, we have some utility customers. It's very powerful in an outage, a power outage. It's useful in a hurricane, a storm. People are sharing things that impact them positively, but also negatively. And with just a computer terminal and no software investment and no hardware investment, with a couple of clicks, you can identify problems in your geography with outages or brownouts, or just getting imagery on, okay, did the tree take down the power lines here or not? And we saw this in Sandy. You saw, when there's a down power line, people were taking pictures of it.
Okay. Then one last question. Is it possible to kind of reverse the process and go through a service like this, pick a geographic area, and tweet out to anybody who's open on the other end?
Yes. This is called engagement. So we have customers that engage the audiences through social media based on time and place. And so, we answer the who, the when, and the where in a real-time way. So the who, when, and where, real-time. And so we have a customer in the United States Navy who uses geophilia during recruiting efforts at events. Typically, the Navy will sponsor games, events like the X Games, state fairs, the Army-Navy football game. And inside of these events, they'll have a tent, and this tent will have Navy staffers, and there'll be a flight simulator, push-up contest, chin-up contest. And so as young men and women post during the event, they will engage them through social media to say, we have a tent here, U.S. Navy, come down, check it out. Check out our simulator, enter a contest, win a prize, and while they're in the tent, then The Navy recruiters can talk to them of what it's like to be a cadet and how it can change your life, and this has helped driven recruiting efforts for the Navy. And there's lots of other use cases here, but it could be as simple as I'm stranded. This happened in Point Pleasant, New Jersey during Sandy. There was a woman who's, I'm stranded on the second floor of my house. I can't get out. Help. Somebody send me help, please. And then, an hour later or whatever, half an hour later, the water's rising, please, could somebody help? And now we saw this in our stream, and we alerted local authorities, and she was saved. But there's a very interesting study that the Red Cross did a couple of years ago, and I might butcher the facts here a bit, but it was something like 50% of people who cry for help on social media expect help to arrive. It's a pretty profound statistic, and this goes back, I think, 18 months to 2 years. So people expect their voices to be heard. It's quite the contrary, because, oh, this is an invasion of privacy. You're able to see too much. No, people are posting on social media so their voices can be heard, okay? And especially in an emergency context. They're posting pictures because their lives are impacted. They want somebody to help, okay? So as public safety officials, as companies trying to manage a crisis, I think it's our obligation to follow that conversation, not only with keywords and hashtags, but also with geospatial tools like Geophedia that allow you to get to that user or that person crying for help in a crisis.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, with that, we thank you all for joining us. As you know, GITA is making an effort to hold monthly webinars. We hope to actually increase that number and get a schedule published soon. We hope you like what you hear, and please, if you're not a member, please do visit gita.org. That is our web page, and join now. Part of this is the benefit of GITA. We will be logging the names of people who participate in these seminars for the production of kind of a registrar service, so you can take, hey, I took an hour education on public media or social media, and use that for things like your GISP certification. So if you're not a member of GITA, we very much would like for you to join, and we thank you for taking the time out today. Phil, do you have something you could throw up your contact information so people with follow-up questions or some other ideas could contact you directly?
Sure. It's Phil, P-H-I-L, at geofeedia.com, Geofeedia.com, and it's P-H-I-L at geofeedia.com. And we're partnering with lots of leading thought leaders in academia and thought leaders in industry to solve problems and support missions. We are not, we're technologists and internet guys, so we need to collaborate with the GITA members to develop these solutions. So that's it, and look forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.